Hello, good day viewers. In today's tutorial we are going to see the continuous random variables of a probability density functions problems. So the first question we are given here says that the random variable x has probability density function of the function f of x, which is ax, and the limits which are at 0 it is less than x less than 1. So we are to obtain value of what? Of a. So therefore we have to obtain value of this a by integration, and therefore and hence calculate the probabilities of x. It is what? Less than or equals to what? 0.8 and greater than or equals to what? 0.2. So after using the first thing that we are going to do, we have to first find the value of what? The value of a. We all know that the integral of what? Infinity to negative infinity of a function of x dx, it is equals to 1. So after using this to find the value of a, we are given to find, and they said hence calculate the probabilities of what? X it is less than or equals to this. So we have to take a look to this. It says x less than or equals to 0.8. So after integrating this, let's integrate it. This should now be equals the integral of what? 0 to what? 0 to 1, which is 0 to 1, and therefore the f of x, which is as ax what? Dx, which will now be equals to 1. After I will shift the value of a, I will have x integral of 1 to 0 what? Dx, which is equals to 1. The next thing to do is that I already have a, so I have to keep down a bracket because I'm integrating this with respect to x. I'm integrating only x squared. To integrate x, only x, I have to say x squared divided by the value of 2 to the limit 1 to 0, which is the same thing as 1. So if I get away to the limit, if I substitute the limit, I will end with a into 1 over 2, which is equals to 1. Because if I put the value of 0, I will get 0, because I will get 0 divided by what? 2 multiplied by a, it will give me what? It's the same thing as 0. So the next thing that I'm going to do here is that I'll have what? A over 2, which is equals to 1. So this is the same thing as over 1. I have to cross multiply, so therefore a is the same thing as 2. So the final solution that I'll find the value of a. So therefore now the value of this a should now be what? Should now be 2x. This value of a should now turn to a 2, because we are only asked to find what? To find the value of what? The value of a. So I can write this as 0, which is less than x less than 1. So as I am explaining it before, this x, it is less than or equals to the 0.8. so I have to take a look to the probability of x, which is what? Which is less than or equals to 0.8, and the probability of x, which is greater than or equals to 0.2. Let's first start with the first one. The first one, which is the probability of what? X, it is less than or equals to 0.8. So when it is less than or equals to 0.8, so this 0.8 should now be what? The upper limit. So I have to say that the integral of the upper limit is 0.8 and the lower limit, which is what? Which is 0. The integral of what? This 2x dx. So for now I'm going to integrate. If I'm to integrate this, I'll end with what? 2 integral of what? 0.8 to 0 of x what? X dx. Let me clean this. So therefore this should now be equals to what? I have to say I have 2, which is what? X squared divided by 2, which is the limit 0.8 So this should now be equals to 2 multiplied by what? 0.8 squared divided by the value of what? The value of 2. If I subtract this by 0 at the end, I'll get what? I'll get 0, the same thing. So this should now be equals to 2 multiplied by, so I have to say 0.8 squared, it will give me 0.8 squared. This should now be 0.64. 0.64 divided by the value of what? 2, which is 0.32. If I multiply it by 2, so therefore this should now become 0.64. At the end, I get 0.64 to this question. So I'm done with the first one. I'm going to deal with this now. So how can I go through this? As you can see, this is less than or equals to 0.8, and this is greater than. When it is greater than, so this should now be what? Should now be the lower limit, which is 0.2, and the upper limit should now be 1. So therefore, now I have to say the probability of what? Probability of x, which is what? Less than or equals to 0.2 should now be equals to the integral of what? 2x dx, and therefore this should now be the lower limit. This 0.2 should now be the lower limit, 0.2, and the upper limit, which is what? Should now become 1, because it says that greater than or what? X is greater than or equals to 0.2. So at the end, I'll put the 2 as in here. So therefore, the 2 will come out. So I'll have 0.2. I'll have x and my dx. So I have to integrate this x. So therefore, I'll have 2. I'll have, after integrating, you get 2x squared. Okay, you get x squared divided by the value of what? Value of 2, 1 to 0.12. So this should now be equal to, I have 2. If I would substitute the limit, I'll have 1 over 2, and therefore minus what? If I substitute the limit of 0.2, upper limit minus lower limit, so therefore I'll have 0.2 divided by the value of 2. This 2 will cancel 2, I'll have 1 minus, if I say 0.2 divided by the value of 2, so this should now be 0.1. So if I said 1 minus the answer, which is 0.1, so at the end I'll have 0.9. So for the second question, find a constant c such that the function f of x, which is cx squared, and 0, it is what? Less than x, less than what? Less than 30. It's a probability density function. So the first thing, we all know that this is a what? This is a probability density function. So, but we are to first, the first question A, it says that we are to find the value of c, which is the constant. So as usual, we are going to use this. So after using this, so this should now be, let me say the second question, which is A. We are going to use the integral of what? Of infinity to what? Negative infinity, but we are going to use our limit 0 to what? 0 to 3. So therefore we have what? We have cx squared what? Cx squared dx, which is the same thing as what? Which is the same thing as 1. So we are going to find the value of what? The value of c. So I have to say c should now come out. This should now be 3 to what? 3 to 0. 3 to 0. This should now be x what? X squared dx, which is the same thing as 1. If I integrate x squared, this should now be what? X cubed over what? Over 3. Let me clean this. So this should now be what? If I integrate this, I'll have, if I integrate x squared, I'll get x cubed divided by the value of 3, and I'll have 0 to 3, which is equals to 1. So if I substitute the limits, I have c into 3 raised to the power of 3, which is 27, and therefore 27 divided by the value of what? Of 3, which is equals to what? Which is equals to 1. And therefore 27 divided by 3, it will give me 9. So therefore I'll have what? I'll have 9c, which is equals to 1. If I divide both sides by 9, divide both sides by 9, 9 will cancel 9. At the end, c, it will now be equals to 1 over 9. So as you can see, the value of c, which is what? The value of c, the new function should now be 1 over what? 1 over 9x squared. 0 is what? Less than x and less than what? 3 to 0, otherwise. So I'm done with the first one. So I'm to compute the probability of 1, it is less than x, less than what? Less than 2. So how can I do that? To solve this one, I have to say, let me first clean this. We all know that the value of c, which is 1 over what? 1 over 9. So now if I take a look to this, I'm to compute probability of 1, it is what? Less than x, less than what? Less than 2. So I have to use what? Okay, because I already find 1 over 9x, so therefore I have to say the integral, but I'm given the limit 1 to what? 1 to 2. So therefore 1 to 2 should now be what? I'll put 19x what squared. This is the same thing as saying 1 over 9 integral of what? 2 to 1, because this is constant, so therefore I have to say x squared. Sorry, I didn't put the what? X squared what? Dx. So therefore dx. So this should now be equals to what? 1 over 9. If I am to integrate x squared, I'll have what? X cube. Okay, I'll have x cube over what? Over 3 2 to 1. So this should now be equals to 1 over 9 of what? This is the limit, upper limit minus lower limit. This same thing as saying 2 to the power of 3 over what? Over 3 minus what? Minus, this is the same thing as 1 over 3. So 1 over 9 of 8, 2 to the power of 8, 2 to the power of 3, which is 8, divided by the value of what? Value of 3 minus 1 over what? 1 over the 3. So 1 over 9 should now be equal to the LCM, which is the same, 3, which is 8 minus what? 8 minus 1, which is 7. So therefore 7 divided by what? 3. So I have to say 1 over 9 of 7 over 3. This should now be equals to 7 multiplied by 1, which is 7, divided by 9 multiplied by 3, which is 27. So therefore this is all for what? For the computing the probability of what? 1, it is less than x less than 2. So this is the end of this class. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and kindly share it to your learning colleagues so that they will learn more about what? About the continuous random variables of what? Of a probability density function. Thanks you for watching.